Hi everyone, this is Sharan. Welcome to my channel. Today is the second day since we started visualization. So the topic that we are going to cover is still Matplotlib library. So the various charts that we are going to cover are the bar chart as well as horizontal bar chart and a stacked bar chart. We are going to see how to make some changes to these charts, like passing on different colors, making some changes to the size, how to print the values above the bar charts, and so on, and how to customize them in order to make it much more better and make it more intuitive as much as possible. And the other charts that we are going to see is pie chart as well as donut chart. So we will be seeing through how to exactly make a pie chart, how to make some changes, like how to explode a part of a pie chart to a slightly more bigger, make it more intuitive, or make everyone's eyes to fall into that particular area where we want the audience to see, as well as how to convert a particular pie chart into a donut chart, how to modify it into a donut chart basically, and finally how to print an histogram, which is really useful in order to see the distribution of the data as such, in order to see how far it is distributed, how wide it is distributed, or whether is it concentrated or is it skewed to a particular point in the data set. So these are all the charts that we are going to see today. Let's get into the tutorial. Let's install all the required package for today. So it would be pandas, numpy, as well as matplotlib library. Yep, so all the packages have been imported successfully. So now what we are going to do is we are going to use the same dataset, the same Netflix dataset that we saw the previous day. Instead of the release year, what we are going to do is we are going to make some of the plots based on the year when the movie was added. So it will be a short span of time, like it won't have a huge range of data. So it should be like within maybe last few years. So let me plot this data and then show you. So this is the same data set that we are going to work on today, and this is where I'm going to modify it. I'm going to pick up the year when the movies or TV shows are added and get the count of them. So let me execute it, and this is how the final data looks like. So the range is now from 2008 to 2020, and we can see the number of movies as well as number of TV shows specific to the year when they were added. We can see that the figures for 2020 is not so high, so maybe this data was so this data set is not very recent, maybe. So this has been extracted maybe later in the month of Feb or March, hence the number of movies or TV shows added is not on scale as compared to the other years. So this is the data that we are going to work on today. So the first one that we are going to see is how to plot a bar chart. So in order to plot a bar chart, like what we need to do is we need to slightly make few more additional parameters, like for example, in addition to the feeder over which we are going to make the plot, we are also going to specify the width of those bars, like how big those bars should be. So this is where we pass on like the width as well as the width of like each of those bars, as well as the next one is we are going to use AX.bar, like to specify that what we are going to do is we are going to plot a bar chart, and we are going to pass on the parameters that we are going to print, like the number of movies as well as the number of TV shows, and we are also going to pass on given value to the x-axis, like a set x label. So all these have been covered already, like previously when we were going through the line chart. So it's pretty much same. So we are going to make pass few more additional things, like for example, like within the x-axis we are going to pass on some text as well as labels to them, and we are going to define the size of the actual chart, which we have already covered. So let me print this and then show you how it would look like. So we can see that the bar chart is quite good, like it is skewed towards like one side, but we can clearly see the year when the movies or like year when they were added on Netflix, and there are two bars, like a blue one is related to a number of movies and the orange one is a number of TV shows. we have them side by side so that we can actually compare them, like which one, like how many movies are and how many TV shows, like whether movies is greater or less. So let's say so we are able to plot all these bars nearby, because what we are saying is we are passing on the width, the location where it needs to be passed. So we are saying like x minus width by 2, x plus width by 2, to make sure that they would be plotted side by side, and then we are able to compare them. And let's say we want to have the values on top of each of the bars. So then what we can do is pretty much by implementing a simple function that you have here. So what would happen is this function is used to print the value specific to each of those bars on top of them. So when I execute this, so what happens is we are able to see the values on top of each of those bars, which clearly gives us more confidence, and we are able to see like how much is the actual difference. So even though the bar chart, like one bigger, one smaller, tells us that like number of movies is much more higher, but since like it's skewed towards the right, we are not able to exactly see like how big what is the actual value. So in these cases, what we can do is we can print the actual numbers on top of each of those bars using a simple function where iteratively we pick up the values and then print on top of each bars, depending upon the location, like how big that bar is, just above it. And what we can do is we can also set the font size. So we can use pretty much very similar to what we saw in the line chart. And by executing this, so now we can see that the text or the numbers are slightly more bigger and they're more clear this time. So this is how we can implement an bar chart. So now let's say we want to pivot, or we want to invert it into an horizontal bar chart. So what we can do is we can pretty much use the same data, like I'm using the exactly same data set, but here for a difference, what I'm doing is I'm creating the input data as a dictionary and passing all the list, the year when they were added, a movie as well as TV shows, all the data as a separate list or array. And so we are passing on the width for the bar charts. And what we are going to do is we are going to use bar h, which says that these bar charts should be horizontal, and we are using a different location, as you see here, in order to print them next to each other or not on top of each other. And what we are doing is we are passing on the specific colors to those bars instead of letting it print with the default color streams. So here one should be red, the other should be green. So red is for movies, green is for TV shows, and everything else is pretty much same to what we saw in the actual bar chart, vertical bar chart. So when I execute this, what you can clearly see that so now it's inverted, it's horizontal. So depending upon the scenario as well as use cases, in some cases it would be preferable to have vertical charts. In some cases, let's say we have a huge list of attributes, and then we want it's very difficult for us to print them in a vertical bar chart, because the size of the bar would become thinner as we add number of attributes, whereas it would be easy for us to scroll. So what we can do is in those cases we can just invert it, and then we can let it print horizontally, so that the size is not compromised, the size of those bars are not compromised, whereas we are able to scroll and then see the actual values. So this is how we would implement an horizontal bar chart. And moving on to the next one, next one is very similar. It is stacked bar chart. So stacked bar chart is very similar to the bar chart, but what we do is we don't specify we don't specify any difference. We are not going to print it next to each other, but we are going to pass on the same location, the same indicator, and then what happens is it would print one on top of the other. So when I execute this one, so what you can clearly see is when we pass on the same location, so it prints the first the TV shows, and on top of it, it prints the number of movies, and each one of them is differentiated by their color. So this is pretty much very similar to what we have passed on here. So the only difference is here we have specified to print those bar, the data 1 as well as data 2, the movies data here as well as the TV shows data here. We have passed on that they should be printed next to each other by just adding the width to it. So now here in this case, what we are going to do is we are not going to specify, or we are not going to add a width and make it print next to each other, but we are just going to pass on the same values, so that what happens is it prints on top of each other, and it becomes so the bar chart becomes a stacked bar chart. So that's about how we implement, like when I execute it, like yeah, you can see how it is getting printed. So now moving on to the next one, that is the pie chart. So pie chart is really very useful when we have a categorical data. So here what we are going to do is we are going to slightly change it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the data. So what I'm doing is I'm creating an additional column, and then I'm adding up the movies as well as TV shows, and creating a new column called the total. So this would be the total number of movies and TV shows added. And I'm going to just take a snapshot, a smaller snapshot, like since 2017 to 2020, like how many movies and TV shows have been added each year, like which year, like the majority of the movies and TV shows have been added. So this would be specifically useful when we have like a categorical data, and we aggregate some value, like maybe let's say we have expense category and the actual expense made. We want to make a, by making a pie chart, we can clearly see which is actually taking like too much of the expenses, like which category is taking a lot of expenses. So we can see the differences based on like how much area of the circle is being covered by a particular category. So we are going to use the movie data set and see how to print or how to create a pie chart. So what we have is we have the 4 different years, as well as we have the total number of movies or TV shows added on that particular year, and then we are going to visualize this on a pie chart. So in case of pie chart, like what we are doing is we are going to say that the subplot, whatever we have defined here, so it is a pie chart, and then we pass on the size, which is the actual number of movies or the TV shows that have been added, and the labels would be the year when they have been actually added. So we can see the sizes has been passed, and the labels is equal to labels, which is passed on here, and explode is used in order to magnify a portion of the particular pie chart. So for example, in this pie chart we have 4 components or 4 years. So what we are saying is we are saying that it needs to slice like it needs to explode the second. It needs to explode the second slice of the pie chart. So when I execute this, so what happens is, so as you see here, the second portion, like which is, it starts from 2017, second data is 2018, the second data is exploded, which means that it is taken out of the actual pie, and then we are able to, so by using the explode option, what happens is we are able to get the focus of the audience to the piece that or to the slice where we want the audience to focus on. So now looking into the chart, what happens is the immediate attention goes to this particular pie here, and we can get the attention, and then we can maybe print some text, or like we can talk about this particular slice here, and what it is, like why it is so, and so on. So that's how explode is used, and we are saying that AX.X is equal to equal in order to make sure that like the end this pie chart is in circular, is like a circle is being drawn, like it's not into a different shape. So that's about the pie chart. So this is like a basic pie chart. So now what we are going to do is we are going to adjust this particular pie chart, and then adjust or modify this particular pie chart into a donut chart. So let me execute this one and then explain you what's happening. So here what you are seeing is it's actually the same pie chart, but it looks different. So what's happening is we are moving the text, like for example here the numbers were printed on the center of that particular slice. So what we are going to do here is, in this case, we are moving those text towards the outside, like using the PCT distance, and we are moving those text out. And what we are going to do is we are going to draw a circle in between. So what's happening here in this case is it's actually the pie chart. We are making each of those slices to explode, so to slightly come out of the center point, And then what we are going to do is we are going to plot the center part using an dummy circle. So then what happens is this pie chart becomes an donut chart, and the values are like initially they were printed somewhere in the center of the slice like here. So now we have used PCT distance to move them slightly apart so that it becomes very clear and visible. So now that's how we modify a pie chart in order to print donut chart. So this donut chart could also be like slightly attractive, like when we have a lot of data points, and then we can make use of all these different kinds of charts for variety purpose. Like technically it communicates or it provides the same information as a pie chart, but like this is slightly different and maybe slightly attractive enough to get the attention of the audience. So that's about the that's about the pie chart. And the final one for today is a histogram. So the histogram is used to plot and then to get the distribution, to get the feel of the distribution of the data set. So for this histogram, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of the random data set. So I'm using NumPy and then the random functionality from NumPy, which we have already covered, and then I'm going to generate 1000 random numbers. So here you can see that I'm making use of seed functionality. So the advantage of seed functionality is every time when we execute this random function, a new set of random numbers would be generated. But when we use the seed functionality here, so what happens is every time when we use the same seed number, the same set of random numbers would be produced. So this is especially useful when we are doing some analysis, and then let's say each and every time like we generate different kind of random numbers, it becomes difficult to exactly measure or to make a comparison. So what we do is we make use of this seed functionality to ensure that the random numbers that are produced are exactly same as what was happening previously. So I'm going to provide and pass on the size for this particular chart, and so I'm going to say this is an histogram, and so X is the random number that we are going to print, and so the number of bins would be like, let me show you what is the number of bins. So the number of bins are actual bars that you see here. So the data set here in this case is divided into 50 different bins. So if I want it to be slightly narrow, maybe I can pass on the value 30 here and then execute it, and then so now what happens is now it's been like slightly reduced, or the width has been reduced. So here now we have like 30 different bins here, and the range of the data is like maybe somewhere close to -3 to 4. Majority of them is concentrated like close to 0. So it appears to be a normal distribution like with a bell curve. So that's how, or that's how the histogram is usually used. Whenever we want to see the distribution of the data like through a visual chart, it becomes very easy for us to get a feel of the actual data. So if in case the values have been skewed towards one side, we would be able to clearly see from this particular visualization. So that's it for today. So the various charts that we have covered is we have seen how bar chart works, like how to make or how to print an horizontal bar chart, and how to modify the bar chart to make it a stacked bar chart, how to pass on the colors to it, how to change the sizes, how to make values to be printed on top of each of those bars, and so on. And we have seen pie chart and how to modify a pie chart into a donut chart, and then histogram. So as you see, like all these are still Matplotlib library. So Matplotlib library like helps us to customize the charts as much as possible. The only disadvantage here is it includes various lines of code. We need to pass on, like even for a single modification, we need to pass on a parameter. We need to define it, and then so it takes like at least one line of code for each and every single change. So that's about it for today. So in next session, we are going to see about using Seaborn, which is really useful when we are going to do the data analysis, because it doesn't take much time. It's very quick, and the charts or the visuals would look much better because the template itself is much more cleaner. It doesn't allow us to do much customization as much as we do in Matplotlib library, but it is really good for while like using it for the data analysis. It doesn't require us to like modify the data. Like it works pretty much well on the raw data set. and we will go through the advantages in the next session, and we will also be going through how to build an interactive chart, like printing instead of printing it in the same window, like how to make it open in a browser so that it allows it gives the functionality of zooming into a particular trend and zooming out and looking into the granular details, so it becomes more powerful when it is interactive. So that's it for now. So if you have learned something new today, please click on the thumbs up button, as well as subscribe for staying connected in this learning journey. If you think this would be useful for any of your friends, please share it with them. And that's it. Bye for now. See you on the next session.